welcome back to another episode of Tech Pro Unicorn Podcast. I am your host, Michael Grace. Today, I'm really excited. Our guest today has written and co-authored over 14 different books. He's a workplace communication wizard. He supports conscious leaders and organizations who want to be world-class communicators, have more fun at work, and get better results. Who doesn't want that? Just some quick facts about him. He's an international keynote speaker and communication coach. He's currently joining us from Sweden. He is rated as one of the top 100 most popular speakers in Sweden. He's a bronze medalist in Swedish championship storytelling, which we've got to talk about because that just sounds like I watched the Emmys last night, and that doesn't sound nearly as cool as championship of storytelling. So we have to talk about that. He's a member of the National Speakers Association, Sweden and Virtual Speakers Association International. He just has so many accolades, and we're going to talk a little bit about his books. If you want to follow along at home, I haven't even told you who he is yet, but he has the most unique and cool name, Antoni Lacinai, and if you spell it correctly, you can follow along at home. It's ANTONILACINAI.com. And that'll bring up his website, which I was sharing with him before we started. It's just got some really cool pop to it. It's a very engaging website. So please follow along at home while we talk to Antoni. Thank you for taking the time and joining us all the way from Sweden. It's 5 o'clock in Sweden. It's 8 o'clock in Phoenix. We're on opposite ends of the day. So thank you for taking the time.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Communication, right, is just one of your platforms along with employee engagement and a focus on the customer. But why communication? Right? And then maybe tell us a little bit about the storytelling aspect of it.
So communication in itself is really not important, although I spend my whole life talking about it and studying it. It's the effect of it that is important. The fact that the communication leads to motivation, if you do it right, and how motivation then leads to performance and results and so on. So communication is completely vital. Without it, we don't function. Without it, nothing works. Without it, we die. But it's not communication in itself that matters. It's what we do with it that matters. So I remember a long time ago, I was already interested in the topic, but I was held at gunpoint at one point. I was 24 years old, walking home from a bar. You know, this was like, I was a bit drunk, 2:00 in the morning. And then these two punks came up and said that they wanted, first a cigarette. I said no. Then they said, give me your wallet. I said no. And they brought out the gun. And then I said, they said, are you sure about that? And I said, no, here you go, take the wallet. But then I got the wallet back, a really strange thing. The whole thing was surreal. And to make that pretty long story short, we parted as some sort of friends. We weren't friends, but I just pretended to be their friend. They went their way, I went home, and I just couldn't sleep after that because I was realizing that I could have been dead by then. That's what happened. I didn't have a bullet in my body. I didn't have a black eye, nothing. My wallet was there, and I was thinking, what was it about us that made me come out of this situation alive? And I think looking back that was like a pivotal moment for me. I was working. This was right after the military service. I was working in a store somewhere, like selling office supplies or something. I was also studying marketing during nighttime. So I was I kept myself pretty busy. But this was like 1992 or something. So this is 30 years ago. And ever since, I've been on this quest of finding out, human psychology, why people do what they do, talk the way they talk, meet and greet and treat people the way they do. And since 2006, I left the corporate career and all that and went my own way, doing my own thing. And I haven't regretted it since. So that is kind of what my pitch on communication. And also I would like to say that I do have what we can call like a not so hidden agenda. And that is that if I can make good people collaborate better, lead better, serve better, and good organizations, then perhaps I will be part of the solution to create 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 100 airbags that will kind of make us, less inclined to crash this planet. Like, can we do something so that my kids can live a good life? That is what I do. So I don't necessarily do a lot of work with companies who have no regards for the planet or the people on it. But if they do, then I want to be there and help them. So that's my kind of not so hidden motive behind all this. And then I bring up my thing, and my thing is communication then, and how to again lead, how to serve, how to collaborate, and so on.
I love it. You essentially talked yourself out of that situation, right? Held at gunpoint, and you used your communication skills, right? Because you didn't brawl with them and beat them up and take their gun and get your wallet back and leave. You literally used the power of communication and persuasion, perhaps, to befriend them in the moment and effectively escape.
I did, and it wasn't so much about the words I used or the words I said. It was more about my whole appearance. I guess the whole nonverbal communication. I just oozed some sort of certainty. I wasn't afraid. I was just there, being very self-confident, but not, perhaps I might have been stupid. I was a bit drunk, as I said before, but I was just there saying, no, this is me. I'm very positive in my intention of not giving you my wallet, more or less, right? And now, of course, they took it because, again, they had a gun, but and they, to be honest, they were not hardened criminals. Like they were 18 years old. They just got a gun, waving around with it, trying to play gangster. So. I don't want to. I want to downplay the situation a bit, at least. But you know what? If I provoked them, shit could have happened.
Yeah, for sure. You got I mean, I've never heard of someone getting a bronze medal in a championship competition around storytelling. That just sounds so cool. I would walk around with that around my neck, like, all day long. It just sounds like the coolest activity. Talk to me a little bit about what is this championship competition around storytelling? How did you find it? How did you enter it? And how did you win?
So I did a TEDx talk in 2017, and I talked to a lot of people who are gatekeepers as well when it comes to doing TEDx's. And one of them, who actually denied me a place at that particular conference, still found me somewhat, I don't know, impressive or something. So he said, you know what, I am together with some other people arranging the Sweden's first ever championship in storytelling, and I would like you to participate. And what we do is we have these topics that you will find out a little bit in advance, and then you will have 5 minutes to share a story, and then we will have voting. The whole audience will vote whether or not you will go on to the next round, and so on. So they had, and I can't remember the first topic, but there was something at least, and I was the one of the people who went on to the final, and then at the final I was fine. Well, I came third. I would say that I'm a bit disappointed because I should definitely have the silver medal, but not the gold medal, because the guy who got the gold medal, he did his own, spoken words. It was just amazing the way he did it. It wasn't much about storytelling, but he was just so entertaining that I said, you know what, he's doing pole jumping and I'm doing high jumping. He's gonna win this competition, and he was awesome. So, but I still in my heart believe that I was a close second.
There you go. I love it. That's a very cool story. I mean, you're using communication. I love your kind of altruistic purpose, right? I always say my best guests and my best entrepreneurs, sure, they'd like to, they have to survive. They have to have a business that's enterprising and makes a little bit of money. But the ones that are really successful have a higher purpose. They have a higher calling. Right? They care about trying to make a difference and change the world in some little way or some big way, depending on their reach, right? You've chosen engagement, communication, all these things that swirl around the workplace, where leaders are trying to motivate people, make a great culture, make a great environment for folks to work in. And we talk about engagement like it's so simple. Like you show up to work and you're engaged, and that really isn't the case. Why is it important for that employee engagement to happen, where people are feeling like they're doing meaningful work and part of the process?
I mean, from a pure monetary perspective, it's simple. Engaged people are more productive. And when they're more productive, they do better things, and they will get better results, and they will show up on the bottom line. It's I've looked into the stats on that as well. And if you have a team that is highly engaged, they will have 30% more productivity, 30% better customer. What do you say? Not customer retention, but also customer. All the kind of satisfaction around customers. They will have higher stock price if they're in the stock market. They will have lower absence. Fewer errors, fewer accidents. It's just a win. It's an obvious win to have engaged people. Not to mention the fact that you have more fun at work, which is perhaps a positive side effect. So it is crucial, I would say. You could whip results out of people for a while, but soon enough, people will just stop doing whatever they need to do. It's going to be minimum effort, and you don't want a whole organization doing minimum effort, because then, it's not going to produce any good results. You're going to be outrun by your competitors, and you will just disappear soon enough. The problem is that very few people are really engaged at work, and there are a number of different companies who study this. Gallup, I guess, is the biggest one, showing that around 10 to 35% of the workforce are actively engaged, doing more than what is on their job description and so on. I think in the US, where you live, it's about a third, like around 30, 35%. Wow. In my country, which is supposed to be one of the happiest countries in the world, 14%. Finland, my neighboring country, 10%. South Africa, around 30%. So it differs in different countries. But it's a low number. I mean, imagine going to work and knowing that 2/3 are there and not necessarily very engaged. And some of them, around 10%, are actually actively disengaged, meaning that they are saboteurs. They ruin it for everyone else. Backstabbing, power moves, ridiculing, all of those things that just make people feel bad. That's even worse, I would say. Those toxic people, they should be coached out of the role, or somehow, get in line and do the right thing.
One of the greatest books that's just such a quick read. It's like an hour read. It's called The Energy Bus. And anytime I talk to new leaders, I ask them to read that book, The Energy Bus. I should look it up. I'll put it down below as well.
Yeah, I want to read it too.
Antoni didn't write this one, but it's very on point to what you're saying. And it talks about building positive energy, right? And then looking for these people that are actively disengaged. You can see them. The book calls them energy vampires, right? They suck the life out of the company. They convince otherwise people that are trending maybe neutral or positive to be less, right? They influence them because they're having a bad day or they're having a bad experience, and they drag the entire company down, right? And as a leader, it's important that you lead. Thus the word lead in leadership. And you have to sometimes do hard things, right? You have to identify these people and set them on their way to wherever they find happiness. If it isn't in their current role at their current job, empower them to go do something else somewhere else that perhaps will make them happier, because they're sucking the life out of your company here. So.
And it can go really fast sometimes if you're not careful. Perhaps they have expectations that are shattered, which means that they're getting really disappointed, and then disappointment leads to less and less engagements and so on. I remember one colleague back, this was probably around the time where I was, held at gunpoint. Perhaps a few years later, I was recruited to a company doing sales, inside sales. And another guy, also externally, got the same role. But then we had one more guy who I think he was in the warehouse. We had like a warehouse. This was Datacom stuff. Mm-hmm. And he got more and more irritated and frustrated and disengaged. And I remember our boss said, "No, this is enough. I need to make him leave this company. I need to lay him off or something like that, fire him." But we said, he's basically a really good guy and he likes his customer and everything, but perhaps he feels a bit left out now that you recruited people from the outside instead. We know that you have another spot open for a new inside salesperson. Why not bring him in and find someone else to handle that warehouse?
Yeah.
All right, he said, I'm going to give it I'm going to give it one shot, one strike and then he's out from now, but we'll try it out. And so he did. And it took like 2 days. And then he was the most engaged person in the company. He was, in his element. He loved it. He just found his place. And this was in the mid-90s. And as far as I know, he is still in that company.
Wow.
Still contributing to that company just because he got that break. Sometimes it's enough to just find a place where you can excel or where you can grow or have fun and influence. And if it doesn't, if that spot doesn't exist, then perhaps we should just coach them out of the company, help them somewhere else.
Yeah. You bring to mind one of my hallmarks of my leadership, right, is just transparent communication. And I remember a story where this guy was just not engaged, right? He was doing the bare minimum. On the rest of the team was, trying to change and transform and do more, and everyone was really engaged. And this guy just wasn't rowing in the same direction. So I went to him and I just said, "Hey, what's up with you? What?" And he said, "Man, I'm just doing this job, but this isn't really what I want to do. I want to do auto repair, and I want to have my own auto repair shop. That's my passion. I go home and I work on cars, and it just makes me so happy." And I said, "Then let's find a win-win, right? Like, why don't you give me a little bit more effort here while you're here? Why don't you use the educational benefit and take some classes, right? And become skilled and ultimately work yourself, into a career." And he did. He spent 8-9 months. He took his courses and he left and he started doing auto repair. And he came back to me and he said, I just appreciated that you were willing to walk with me on that journey, right? While I found what I was really passionate about, and you, instead of like firing me, you gave me an opportunity and he improved his performance while he was there. But it was just that transparent communication with that employee that I think sometimes as leaders, we get so busy, right? And we forget that one-to-one human connection and knowing about the people that you have the honor to lead. And understanding their story and how do they help you, but how do you help them, right? It's communication is two ways.
This is a beautiful story where you also show respect, consideration, and one of the superpowers I talk about in communication, you showed empathy. You really were there for him, and since he was able to put in those 8-9 months and doing probably a pretty good job in the meantime. Mm-hmm. So that was good on you.
I want to talk about the superpowers. So empathy is one. You mentioned 3. What are the other 2?
Yeah, empathy for me is actually also the number 1 superpower, because unless you try to understand people, how can you make sure that you are understood, for instance? So empathy is the first one, being interested rather than interesting, being present, curious, listening, and so on. And then you have clarity. So if empathy is about you understanding them, clarity is about them understanding you. So how do you make people feel smart? How do you make people understand what you're really trying to say, what your message is? How do you make it stick? So clarity is so important. And it's kind of humoristic sometimes that we go around believing that we are understood by other people. There's so much going on in our brains that whatever comes out isn't exactly what we mean. But then we are supposed to, be mind readers and understand what everyone else is thinking. And we don't. We have our own filters as well. Everyone has the filter of deleting information or distorting information or generalizing information. And then we have our experiences in life and all that. And we zone out from time to time, come back into the conversation. So there's so much going on that we have no clue about. perhaps you have been to a really awesome dinner with friends or breakfast now for you, and you're just thinking about that breakfast while we have this conversation. Of course, you won't listen to me, in the same way that you would do if you would just clear your mind and be with me, for instance. And the third superpower is then energy. Energy, so that people can believe that you believe. Why should they believe if you don't seem to do it? Which means that energy is mostly observable in nonverbal communication. How you say things, how you look, how you sound, all of those things that really matter, which is also the most ancient type of communication we have. Body language is the oldest communication we have. Millions of years since we were, pre-human species, it's body language, and then voice. First it was grunts or screams, and then some 200,000 years or so, we managed to produce words, and 6,000 years ago, we managed to produce words on paper or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of goes step by step. I mentioned it to you. I have a dog. She's in the next room. Body language is the only thing. I don't, but I could be really mean to her with my words. But if I do it in a cuddly way, she would just listen. She doesn't care what I say. She would just focus on my body language, and if I smile and pet her, then she would be happy. Mm-hmm. So it makes big sense to also think about energy, and have the right energy. You shouldn't probably have the biggest smile on your face if you're supposed to lay off people. Then you need to worry. Take it down a notch. If you meet somebody who's low on energy, perhaps you should just have a little bit higher, but not too much higher. If I say to you, "Hey, Mike, what's up?" and you say, "My house burned down," and I say, "Great, let's," and then I move on. It's just it doesn't work,
Yeah.
And then I haven't listened. Then I haven't shown my empathy. Yeah.
Yeah. I love those three. I think where I struggle is in the clarity. Like I bring the energy, right? I do a lot of sales, and people are like just riveted, right? I can work the room, and I've mastered. Well, I haven't mastered it, but I think I'm fairly good at the energy. The empathy, my wife will tell you, sometimes I don't think before I speak, right? And I lack the empathy. I'll give her a response like, "That's weird," when I should have said something like, "Oh, that's really fascinating. Like, tell me more," and so, I'm a guy, and I think guys struggle a little more with empathy, perhaps, for some reason. But clarity is one where I think your brain gets ahead of your mouth sometimes. And sometimes my wife will tell me, she'll be like, "That was really random." Or she'll give me feedback like, "You speak in incomplete sentences." Or, "You think you told me that, but you really didn't say that." And I think in my head, I know what I'm trying to communicate. And oftentimes how it comes out, even my team, right? I lead just a fascinating team, just an amazing team. And sometimes they'll loop back to me and they'll go, "Hey, thanks for that meeting, but we're a little unclear on what it is exactly we're supposed to do." Because I'm so busy trying to paint a vision and a picture and in such that they're like, "Okay, now we need to take that and translate that into like tactically, what is it that we're going to go do?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, let me get down there and work with you on that." So I love, I those are amazing, right? If you can get good at those three, that's powerful.
That is powerful. Then you are a super communicator, and then you will build relationships better and deeper relationships. You will have that as well. You will have bigger sales, I guess, if you're in sales, for instance, do better business and so on, lead people better. But you need all three. If you only have, for instance, empathy, but you lose out on energy, then you become a bit boring after a while.
Yeah.
It's like a psychologist saying, "Yeah, tell me more," and then nothing happens. You don't get a response. Or if you have high clarity, let's say that you're really clear, but you lack empathy. Well, that's almost the definition of a psychopath. So it's kind of, it has to be all of them in some way or another, and then you're often good at one, perhaps two, but never all three. So it's one of those things that you have to work with, and you just identify that for you, having a visual mind, having lots of things that you think about almost simultaneously, perhaps eager to take that giant leap. It is a challenge for you then to just take one step back and then a step at a time explain. Perhaps using the right type of techniques that you can use, the power of three, for instance, keeping it to the simple, keep it simple instead of complicated. And I don't know if you use PowerPoint, but in the corporate world that I spend my time on, in most with my clients today, and also in my previous life when I was in the corporate world, people speak PowerPoint-ish or Excel-ish, and nobody gets it. And everybody nods and looks like they understand, but they are so confused when they leave those meetings because it's just 14 bullets, font size 12, text, and then a bloody flower in the corner to decorate the crap. It's just awful, It's torture. And that is not clarity, and it's not energy either. It's just whatever you think about should be on a slide. And Swedes are excellent at this. We produce slides. If we're going to say something, we need to put it on a slide first. Otherwise, we can't say it. It's incredible. But I've seen it in so many international corporations, including U.S. corporations, that we use slides instead of thoughts. It's just stupid.
I love it. I always tell my team, whenever we have meetings, right, and we're victims of PowerPoints, I want you to take the words on a slide and produce a graphic, because it forces you to distill down that wall of text and go, okay, how do I visually represent this? And it's been really transformational for our strategy practice to be able to do that. And we've produced some just amazing visuals, because I won't let them have walls of text, right? Because I hate going into a meeting. If you're going to give me a PowerPoint with walls of text talking about what you're saying, send that to me in an email. I'll read it and get back to you. And I don't need to go to your hour-long meeting where I sit there for story time with milk and cookies, usually without the milk and cookies, which is even worse. And you're going to read to me your PowerPoint slide. If you're going to read to me, then I want story time. I want graham crackers and milk and be able to fold my arms and put my head down on the desk and take a nap. Because that's the reaction that from kindergarten I was ingrained. If you're going to read to me, I get to go to sleep. Yeah.
I have a speaker colleague, Mia Liljeberg is her name, and she says that what you can say in 1 hour, I can read in 10 minutes. So if exactly
Amen.
As you say, if you're just going to read out loud and then give it to me, I can read it in 10 minutes and then we can discuss it instead. And I think it's brilliant. Of course, we can't use it like that. We should use probably something called dual coding instead. And now we're zooming in on PowerPoint, but that means that you have a simple picture or graph and then just a few punchy words, and then memory will be higher because you can link those relevant words to that picture and then you will remember more. So that's one of the memory hacks you can use if you want to use visuals.
We get that all the time with these graphics, right? People will go, they might not remember exactly what was said, but they'll go, you had that graphic, the one with the big swirl and the so visually it resonated, right? And we had a great discussion about it. And they might not remember, that was, slide 26 of this deck or whatever, but they'll be like, hey, that graphic, can you bring that up again, right? And they want to talk about it. And we use a digital whiteboard when we facilitate now, so that when we mark up everything, it's all captured. And then we not only bring up the slide, but all the notes from the conversation that we had. And it's super powerful because then we can just pick up where we left off versus, okay, here's the slide. What did we say about that? Oh, I don't remember. Let's start over, right? It's all on this infinite canvas on the digital whiteboard.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Sounds like a good way.
It's a great
But also,
way.
Of course, they should remember. There is this. I can't remember who said it, but it was something around. I cannot remember what you said, but I do remember how you made me feel.
Yes.
And this is one of those really powerful proverbs, which I actually tend to disagree a bit on, because if you don't remember what I said, but only how I made you feel, then the only thing you remember is me. And I actually have an example of that. I was giving a presentation in Boca Raton, Florida, and 2 years later, a guy on the street just locked eye with me and moved across the street towards me like a missile. And I don't know if he want to punch me or whatever we want to do. I have no idea, but I'm just standing there waiting for him to approach me. He says, it's you, he says. And I said, yeah, it's me. Who are you? And I was in the audience at Boca Raton. Man, you were awesome. And of course I grew an inch and I said, thank you. until he said, "I don't remember a thing you said, but you were awesome."
That's horrible.
And that got me really thinking, did I hit the mark? And I would say, no, I did not hit the mark. He remembers me. He has no idea what I talked about, which means that I failed in my communication.
Yeah.
It was all energy and no clarity. I was an entertainer.
That's a great example. Yeah, I think a lot of times people, right? I'm a content creator. I create podcasts. I create YouTube videos. I act. I'm acting at a haunted house this season. Like, I just love the art of performance. And a lot of times I get that reaction. People are like, "Oh, it's you. You're the guy with that goes to trade shows and gives out unicorns and blah, blah, blah." But they have no idea what my platform is, right? They have no idea what I talk about at the conferences or what I do on my YouTube. They're just attracted to me as a personality, which is great. And like you said, I'll grow an inch every time somebody runs up to me and is like, "You're that unicorn guy." It's like, yep, love it. But what I'm really trying to do is leverage these platforms to transform businesses and communicate a message and, like you, make a difference in the world, right? Make the world just a little bit better through what I do. And if I'm missing there, then the whole thing is kind of fun, but it's more of it's more fun than effective, to your point of clarity.
Yeah, I guess it's more fun than transformational. So
right. Yeah. Part of your books, which I love, right? So if you click on books if you're following along, right, you just mentioned kind of the PowerPoints and the meetings. You mentioned body language, and you have like books out on all these topics, right? Employee engagement, which we talked about, virtual leadership. I want to talk about virtual leadership because I think, in 2 years, we've been all trying to figure that out a little bit. People that historically were able to, I used to do rounding, right? I worked at a very large company, had a really large team. We were in a 4-story huge building that used to be a department store. There was hundreds and hundreds of people in this building. And I would round not only to my people as a leader, but I would round to just other people and just be like, "Hey, how's it going today? Here's what I do. What do you do? I just want to learn a little bit about you," right? And it was really effective for my leadership brand, right? People were like, "Wow, it's really cool. This leader's coming around. He's spending 5 minutes with me." And I do an hour once a week. You can't do that virtually, right? I can't pop into your office space and talk to you so easily. I have to awkwardly be like, "Hey, I'd like to have a meeting about nothing just to find out about you for 5 minutes." And people are like, "How do I even schedule a 5-minute meeting on my calendar?" Right? It's so hard. So I think virtual leadership has thrown leaders into a bit of a tailspin on how do we lead virtual teams? Because I think it's very different than perhaps how we led physical teams were in the office with them.
Yeah, I mean, we all experienced the pandemic and the drawbacks of it as well. Like you just mentioned, no communication is richer in its nature than meeting people face to face, like in person. So I get it. I understand what you're saying there, where you're coming from with that. Now, there are other advantages, of course, of virtual communication and virtual leadership. For instance, you don't have to hire people based on where they live, but based on what they know and how they can contribute, so that you can hire people from wherever. And we've seen that for a long time before the pandemic. I mean, I was, again, in a global company before I started my own company, and we've had distributed teams for a long time. Mm-hmm. So that's actually nothing new. It requires so much more from the leader. It requires more structure. It requires more tools to engage people in a virtual format. And it also requires people or leaders to actually sometimes just pick up the phone and use that phone instead of the water cooler. And we have forgotten that the phone is actually a phone because it's a computer with everything else on it. That the phone part is the smallest part of a phone today, relevance wise. But it's just an effective tool to just pick up the phone and say, hey, Mike, how's it going? I don't have a specific area. I just want to hear your voice and see if everything is okay. Like something like that could be very effective. But as soon as you have the phone for a phone conference, then it's useless. Then it's just bad. And that's why I think that Zoom and Teams and so on is better, because at least you have a possibility. I don't say everyone uses the camera, but you have a possibility to at least look at people, which helps them a bit. Not necessarily all the time. You can get kind of overloaded in your mind and so on when there's too many, gallery view, 25 people, who to focus on and all that. So it could be a bit messy as well. But it's possible at least to do something more. For me, in-person communication comes first. Then comes nothing, and then comes video. And then comes nothing, and then you have phone, and then it's way down there. You have chat, email, and smoke signals, like in the very bottom. And I sometimes say that email, the advantage of email is traceability.
Yeah,
it's traceability of the mistakes you've made somewhere along the line. That's the email advantage. It's not about efficiency. I mean, I can feel efficient that I just send an email and it's out of my hair. I don't need to worry about that until something comes back. And I use emails quite a lot. I mean, and chat as well sometimes. I'm probably the older generation, so I do more emails than chat, but still I use it, and I can see the benefit of it, especially from an efficiency perspective, but not from a communication perspective. Of course, if you want to look at things like time, money, pollution, and other things, then virtual communication is the thing. But it's not the thing, because if you look at communication, because really what we are hardwired to do, you and I, is to sit around a campfire and talk and meet.
Yeah.
That's what we really aim to do. But with that said, I actually enjoy virtual communication quite a lot. When I went into this pandemic with my work, and I listened to one of your previous podcasts again recently, what was the piano bar and leadership thing?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy he seems to be such a nice guy, and his way of looking into the pandemic and what happened and all that. And I can relate to that. I mean, the rug was swept under you. You just had to think about what to do. So for 2.5 months, I had 0 assignments, which is kind of crazy in my business. But I decided to just take the bull by the horn. I already wrote a book about virtual meetings in 2016, so I was in a good place, good position to do this and help other people with it. And I just ramped up my competence when it came to tech gear. And I'm not necessarily the most technical guy, but I'm good enough at least. So
yeah,
I'm at my third or fourth generation of stuff right now to just produce this high quality communication to my clients. And when I'm done, I turn off the camera and I go to my living room, because I have my office in my house, and I can take a cup of tea or whatever, and the whole travel part is gone. So I can see lots of advantages with it from that perspective. Also, what I did recently, Mike, is this was last year, 2020. I did a study on 600 or something leaders around the world about virtual leadership, the challenges, and then I complemented that with a new survey for hybrid leadership challenges. So one of the things you can find on my webpage is a downloadable analysis of what those 500 something leaders have said when it comes to their challenges leading people in a virtual or in a hybrid environment, which is the new thing. And I think it will be new for the next 2 years or so, and then it will just be business as usual. But there are things that we need to think about when it comes to, for instance, the flexible work arrangements and how to communicate in that type of environment, which I believe could be the best of both worlds if done right, and perhaps the worst of both worlds if done wrong. So we have a beautiful opportunity to do something really powerful right now, if we do it right.
I always say we have to understand who we're communicating to. And there's a little bit, even as a leader, right? Leaders, I think, sometimes get lulled into the trap of, well, I'm the leader. People must communicate, they'll come to me and they'll meet me. And really good leaders that truly serve, I think, pay attention to who they're communicating to and where is the best way and what is the best format to communicate to them. I sometimes when I use a tool called Loom, LOOM, and it creates short videos. And instead of sending an email or sending a voicemail, sometimes I'll just write the same technology that I'm using today, a camera and a microphone. I'll create a video if maybe I want to speak to my team or whatever, instead of sending an email to them. And they just get so jazzed up. They're like, wow, we see Michael, we can see his body language, he's talking to us. And I'll do that now with several other people. If it's a new contact or something, I'll send them a note. Hey, I'm super excited to meet with you. Blah 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 blah. And that power of video is so cool. And Loom is free. It's a great tool out there, relatively new. But sometimes I know like email is better when I communicate with some clients. When I communicate with my fellow leaders on the leadership team here at RPI, Teams is better, right? We communicate better in that chat format. So paying attention to where is your audience and how do they want to be communicated to is sometimes, to me, I have to remind myself, like, wait a minute, who am I going to talk to? Okay, I'm going to create a video for that. Or who am I going to, okay, I'll just send an email. Being conscious of the receptors of your listener and your audience is like a key tip, I think.
I so agree with what you're saying, and so many things that happens with me. When I talk about this, my brain is kind of on firework right now. I also do video mail. I have another application, but I would check out this Loom as well. It sounds like a good one. It's really powerful, and very few people still use it. So this is one of those things that you can be a unicorn. You can be unique. You can do something different from the rest of the crew. So, and I do it as well. And I actually send out a Christmas greeting on video, like a video mail to each client who hired me throughout the year. And it takes me forever, but it's kind of one of those things where I want to say, we're nearing the end of the year. Thank you so much for the work we did in March, April, for instance. And that's it.
Wow.
And people just love it. It's one of those few things I do, which is about customer care.
It's a differentiator, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's a differentiator. We send our Christmas cards. Our leadership team is all over the country in different offices. But the Christmas cards that we send our customers or to our employees, we ship those to all the leaders to sign, hand sign. They go to this office, then that office, then this office, then that office. So when you get it, it's not some printed signature nonsense. It's actually signed by all the leaders, right?
You make an effort
in wet pen, and it shows like we really care. Like, and it's such a small thing. You send out a video greeting or whatever. It's a differentiator that bigger companies aren't doing, that people that have forgotten the customer aren't doing, and it really shows that you care. I want to hit on one other thing. You talk about people as popcorn, and I'm fascinated by that. What does that mean?
Okay, so first of all, this is not my invention. This is Helen Lidstrom. She wrote a book about the workplace at Microsoft 10 years ago. And I just love the metaphor where she talks about popcorn people. So I'm spreading her word here, her gospel. Right. I just love it so much. And I also tie it back into engagement studies like the Gallup studies and so on. So basically, here's the analogy. You have a bag of microwave popcorn. And if you can imagine that each corn is an employee, and you want them to pop, what do you need? Well, you need basically two things. You need time and you need heat. You need energy. Time and energy. Those are the things you need. Mm-hmm. So for me, it takes about 2 minutes on 800 watts, and then I get a nice bag of popcorn. But the first corn start to pop really early, like after 20, 30 seconds. Those are the actively engaged people. Those are the one that tells the rest of the bag, come on, let's pop, let's do this, let's reach that goal or whatever it is. And then, of course, in the middle comes, like a bell curve, comes the rest of the bag, like bah, 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 like that. And then you have some laggers, like poof, 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 and then you're done. That's the 2 minutes. And you bring out the bag, you put it in a nice bowl, and you start to munch away. But you will find at the bottom of this bowl those corns who refused to pop. And those are, of course, the actively disengaged people, if we talk about the Gallup language, right? And then they're going to say things like, I'm not going to pop. It's not in my job description to pop. Why should I pop? Let Thomas pop instead. Oh, so Michael pops before me. Is that how it's going? Well, I'm definitely not going to pop. And then you have all those things going on. So you have that metaphor, and it's just a beautiful metaphor. It's a great way of explaining how people work, and I tell this many times in my lecture today, my keynotes. And I remember at one point, my customer came back to me and said, you know what, when you left, this woman came up to me and she said, we need to talk. I don't pop here. And I found that so courageous that she could say that. and then they could find a place for her to pop, basically. So so Helen, thank you for that. Helen is one of my LinkedIn pals. She had that metaphor, and I love it, and I just spread her words when it comes to that one. I don't mind doing that at all.
It makes so much sense, right? And in my head, I'm like, he's absolutely right. There's always these unpopped kernels. It's such an amazing metaphor to think about, because almost as soon as you put it in, you hear pop, 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 and you're like, oh no, like they're going to get burnt because they popped, but they don't get burnt, right?
Well, they will get burned if you spend like 5 minutes on the bag instead.
Mm-hmm.
If you spend too much time and too much energy just to make those stubborn corn pop, then you will burn the rest of the bag. So it's again a balance. How much time will you spend and how much energy will you spend on that bag? You need to find the right the right kind of mix or the right recipe for that.
I love the story of the lady after one of your talks, felt empowered enough to come up and take charge of her career, right? Essentially, and say, this isn't working for me. And I always say that's an okay conversation to have with your employer. Like,
and
hey,
you had that. You told us the story before. You had that conversation with the guy who wanted to do.
I think everybody should have that level of transparency with their. If you're working in someplace and you can't have that conversation for fear of retribution or whatever, that is indicative that you're either under the wrong leadership or in the wrong company, right? And sometimes you might be in the right company just under a bad leader. There's bad leaders out there. Not every leader is good, right? Just because they're in a managerial position doesn't mean that they know how to be a manager. They're winging it. Just, chances are they haven't taken enough seminars, done enough self-improvement to really work on their skills. Like, I self-admitted clarity is one of my, blind spots. I know it. I actively work on it. I'm trying to improve and do better, but a lot of leaders don't do that. A lot of leaders get promoted into leadership. They're bad. They don't have any skills. They think, well, I'm a leader. Now I'm empowered to whip the horses. And if you're under that type of leader, you might need to move, right? Different job, different leader, different company.
Yeah, and it has been shown that if you have a company with high executives being perceived as very empathic, to go back to the empathy part, then you will have a much higher engagement among the crew, and of course the opposite as well. So empathy again comes back into play here. And if you feel that you are now promoted into a leadership role or a management role, and you say, now I am entitled to the corner office or to the best parking space, or I should go ahead before you in line, and I should be all of those things. I should get all the person, you should get nothing. And the first thing that goes away is empathy. So empathy is the most fragile of the three superpowers, because again, from a leadership perspective, unless you stay humble and grateful and focus on your people and the cause, and start to think about yourself instead and how to defend your new position, then you will lose empathy, which means that you will lose all the loyalty and trust from your people, who will either leave or find ways around you, more or less. So that's a vicious circle you end up in that case. So be very, very worried, I would say, if you get those signals that people are in a more like a conflict stage or frustrating state that something might be wrong with you. So instead, focus on keeping that, perhaps what got you to that leadership position. Perhaps there was empathy. Make sure that you're grateful enough and humble enough to realize that you are there to serve a cause, and help those people also reach that cause.
I love it. Such great advice. We had a guest on that talked about like first-time managers, right? And when you become a leader or a manager, nobody gives you the book, right? Nobody hands you a book and says, here's how you do it. I tell everyone my wife is a nurse, and sometimes, nurses go through a ladder and then they become a nursing supervisor. And it's just kind of almost by like tenure, they get elevated up. They might be a great nurse, but you can be a great nurse and a horrible leader, right? Nobody teaches this. I have 2 degrees in management and leadership. It is a science, right? It's something to be studied and consistently improved upon. But you just like summarized such a great tip for folks to be grateful, approach it with a spirit of service to both the people that you get the honor to lead. You get to touch people's lives every day, and it's such a gift.
And it doesn't mean that it's easy. It can be bloody hard sometimes to do this, but it is worthwhile once you're in there. But I mean, you can also be, as you say, you can be in your first management position. I remember being a young kid of 20 something, but when I got that first management position, and I wasn't equipped with it. It was just like you said, here's the title, here's the job, good luck. And I'm doing my best. And I remember one guy, he was just angry because I got promoted and not him. And he started to protest and whine. And it wasn't a good atmosphere. And I couldn't handle it. I know after a while, when he said for the umpteenth time, why do I need to do that? It was just not popping, according to our analogy.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, and I wanted to take the words back into my mouth, but they were out there. I said, you do it because I'm your boss and I tell you to do it. And while I was saying it, I realized how stupid that was. That was just me losing because I didn't have any arguments for anything anymore. So I felt so embarrassed saying it, but I did, and I regretted it immediately. And I realized that this doesn't work. It's not like this guy would say to me, now I understand why I should do it. Thank you for clarifying that for me. It's because you're the boss. Oh, I'm so inspired. Okay, that didn't happen.
That's so awesome. That is such. I think right. Both Antoni and I are probably older than 30, and I think yeah. So when you get to our age, right, you get these stories and this experience, and if you're just starting, find a mentor. I talk so much about mentorship, right? Find somebody who can help and inspire you and give you some skills and some tips, or go on a self-improvement journey on your own, right? There's so many resources in this day and age of the internet. You can go to Antoni's site. And there's all kinds, if you go to Insights, there's all kinds of stuff, right? Just empathetic communication. If you don't understand it, he's got a post on that, right? You can just go post by post by post and learn something, right? Open yourself up to that learning, open yourself up to coaching, get some training. I want to highlight a little bit about what you do, because you can go help companies, you can go do speaking seminars and such. You also do training. You've got all these books out there. Talk to me just a little bit about where you engage with people in companies.
How do you mean?
Like if somebody's like, this is really cool, we need Antoni to come help us. How does that happen?
I mean, it happens often through email, actually. Going back to that, they contact me on an email or on LinkedIn, for instance, or some people actually even pick up the phone. Many times it's about, we have this conference, internal or open conference. We would like you to talk about this with us. For instance, workplace communication or leadership or something like that. You have some cool stuff and some valuable things to share. Can you do that? Or they might say, you know what, we need to improve our leadership team or management team here. It's not working well enough when it comes to the way we communicate with the rest of the team and so on. So I can do that, for instance. Or some people are very, very concrete and say, you know what, we suck at presentations. We're really bad, but we need to be better because we can't get the message out there. Can you help us? Or we have these spokespersons who we want to promote and highlight and help to be out there on those conferences, for instance. So there's different ways of approaching me is easy. Just find my name and you will find me. I'm the only one with that name. And then when it comes to the actual deliveries I do, they're all on my homepage, whether it's the keynotes, whether it's the trainings or workshops and things like that. So as long as it's about how we meet, greet, and treat each other from a work perspective, then I'm in. And especially if you're a good company who cares about the planet and the people, then I'm definitely in.
I love it. Meet, greet, and treat each other. That I'm going to steal that because that's just such a cool tagline, right?
Yeah, take it.
Yeah, I love it. Antoni, this has been awesome. We could keep going, but there's so much out there. Again, if you guys want to get in contact, your LinkedIn page is really cool too, because you're constantly posting stuff, right? You're constantly creating some content out there. The website is great. The link to some of the books are out there. There's videos. There's all kinds of downloadable content. You can just consume as much, Antoni, as you'd like out there, and then reach out. A lot of people, I think sometimes pause and they're like, "Well, I don't want to bother him. I don't want to, Antoni's a man of communication, so feel free, reach out, say hello, tell him what inspired you. Oftentimes, for those of us that create content, just hearing from you really helps, inspire and motivate us.
Yeah, I mean, I have an idea about being approachable as much as possible, and I adhere to the Churchill saying or proverb. He says, "You make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give." So let me give something to you guys. We haven't talked about this, Michael. Okay, to the listeners here. I've written a number of books, as you say, and some of them have been translated to English. One is called Employee Engagement, and it's actually about 20 communication insights that I found during the decades I've been searching for this ever since I was held at gunpoint. I have a hidden link on my webpage where you can download it for free without paying for it, a PDF version of it. So Antoni@lacinai.com is my email. And if you just say that you listen to this podcast, if you want that book, I will give you that hidden link so you can download it for free. No strings attached.
That is an awesome gift. I appreciate that. I'm sure the listeners will. This has been awesome. I want to thank you for sharing all your stories and for the content that you create and put out there, and for your purpose of really trying to make people better, make the world a better place for both leaders and employees to work in the workplace. So, and for taking an hour out of your evening, joining us from Sweden, and sharing your time with us here on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.